everybody, Vince Holton of Classic Car TV here again. I'm filming Lotuses once more. I'm off to Fernhurst to film part 4 of our series in which we cover the conversion of a very nice early Elise S1 to an analog automotive SuperSport. Oh, by the way, you may have noticed I'm not in an Elise today. I'm in a very nice Esprit GT3. Some would say that this is the best version of the Esprit. I'll leave you to make your own minds up about that. It's certainly a great car. In episode 1 we dealt with what the SuperSport was all about and learned from Steffen Dobke what he had in mind at the beginning. In episode 2 we looked at the donor car. We went out and sourced the car. What did we need to look for? What mechanical issues did we need to think about? And what did we need to pay? In episode 3 we dealt with the breakdown of that car and preparation for turning it into the SuperSport. We also looked at the options an owner might choose to spec. And now in episode 4 we're going to be dealing with perhaps the most exciting part of all, which is the build-up of the car. We're actually getting close to it being a finished vehicle. So let's go talk to Steffen again, shall we? Well, Steffen, here we are again. A little bit further along the way in the build process of this SuperSport. In fact, we're quite a long way further along the way.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us where we are today?
Yeah, sure. So I think last time we'd had the bodywork back from paint.
Yes.
It was onto a chassis which is still on a dolly. But effectively then we trial fit or dry fit all the bodywork up. It's already been done to a certain extent, but it's been done to a higher level now. All the windows are put in, door mechanisms. It's basically ready to go, bar the rear clam, which we leave off. All the suspension's back on it, and it's just a few. Main thing was installing the engine, gearbox, and the wiring and ancillaries of that.
Well, this is going to be the bit a lot of people have been waiting for. We're going to talk now about the engine.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very interested to know what's been going on there. So tell us about this engine in this car.
Yeah, so we require a donor engine, which is why we have a donor car. There's a lot of parts that we need to carry over that aren't available. So some of the plastics mainly, cam covers, sump we refinish, any bracketry that goes onto the engine, aluminium and steel we recycle and repowder coat. If it's an aluminium one, we'll aqua blast that so it comes up better than new.
Yep.
Gearbox casings, again we use the original gearbox casings, aqua blast those.
I mean, you wouldn't know, would you? This looks like a new casing. The aqua blasting is really effective.
Yeah, the finish we get on that is proper better than new. It's a lot brighter as well. So,
sure.
And it stays looking like that. So some on the SuperSport, which is probably 2 years old now since we did some of these works to it, it still looks like new. All nuts and bolts, they get sent off and either usually re-zinced or cerakoted in certain applications on some of them. Cam covers get cerakoted. So basically some of those donor parts get refinished to a much higher level than they were originally. And then the new bits go on, so a new internals for the engine, so it's a new block, an N-series block, which is stronger, has some stronger webbing to it, new liners, new rods, new pistons, depending on the spec that you choose, it'll either be the standard crank or forged or billet on the higher end engines.
So the billet crank, I believe, is an option, isn't it?
Yes, so the billet crank we sort of just made because of the cost of that, which is what some people spend on engine builds themselves. They're quite expensive. Yes. We have our own billet crank now. We have our own rods made, which I think you've got some shots of. Yep. So the whole bottom end is built as strongly as we can with as much new parts as we can. I'd say some of those ancillary pieces are sort of carried over. Fresh heads, bigger valves, our own cams, and basically many new throttle bodies. So yeah, it is essentially internally it's new engine. There's just some of those extra parts that are carried over. So has this engine got pretty much everything you can throw at it? Everything you can throw, yeah. So this particular one has got a billet crank in it. Yep. So that is going to be the sort of the higher spec, and that just gives you those extra. We're able to, because it's balanced, we're able to rev it a little bit more. It does produce more power, but it significantly reduces a bit more torque as well. So it's actually slightly more drivable. So it's not a case of being really revvy and you have to sort of access that because it's so high up. Both the 200 horsepower and the sort of 200 plus, if you like, engine that this one is will be. It's throughout the rev range. So what will it rev out to compared to a standard engine? several thousand more than
really?
a standard. Yeah,
that's amazing.
You never, until you put it on a dyno. So each individual engine is dynoed, so it's not just a generic map that we plop onto it.
No.
It'll have our own ECU and our own wiring loom now, engine wiring loom. So this will be the next stage would be for this engine once the mechanicals are finished and it's fired up, which will probably be next week.
Yep.
We leave the clam off, transport it down to our hub dyno, and then that's when you find out exactly what's what. They usually typically, and being open about that, they're usually typically brand new engines. We've run them in on the dyno. They tend to be a little bit less horsepower than, for instance, 6 months later. So I've found that out for the SuperSport. We got good 209, I think, horsepower of that, so a smidge under 210, and it felt great. It was a very tight, nice engine. A few thousand miles on it. We've re-dynoed it, and it feels freer, and it does give a bit more power. So as nice as a new engine is, I think it's good to put a few miles on them, and then they really come into their own.
Absolutely, yeah. So you've talked a little bit about the internals of the engine, but a lot of the finishes here are really very nice. This cam cover finish you said was what? So?
Yeah, so that's the original cam cover, which typically were either painted or sometimes you can get them powder coated. So on some restoration jobs we powder coat them. That's a product called Cerakote. So it's basically a ceramic base coating, but it's really, really, really thin, so you get a nice finish on it, but it has some really good both heat properties, which is why we use it on the cam cover, and also impact properties. So just from a simple thing, that best will in the world, if a mechanic or someone drops something on that, I've dropped spanners by accident, and it's really hard to chip off. So whereas if you had a painted surface, you get it all beautifully finished, something happens, or tighten the bolt up a little bit too much and it cracks the paint, that is pretty much bomb-proof. And because of the heat properties, we use it in other areas as well. So we do a dipstick in it. There's a few other brackets around by the exhaust system. So anywhere where there's a heat issue, we tend to use that. And obviously you can use a sort of palette of colours. So we used a bronze colour, which on the first SuperSport demo car, and then this client's decided to carry that over. It does go quite well with the gold.
It does indeed. And for those people that missed this previously, the gold is there for
two reasons. Yeah, mainly heat. So we put a soundproofing element in other areas. So we do add a bit of weight with some sound deadening. That's just to make the car feel a bit, the under trays and the sort of floor under the seats and in the footwell are so thin, they vibrate, and because we're saving weight in other areas, I felt we could just add a little bit more, and it's not much, it's it's a tiny bit of weight, but it'll just make the whole experience. But that's all going to be sort of hip level, if you like. So inside the fuel tank, on the back of here, that's obviously a very high temperature reflective surface. We do take away the sound insulation on the back there, but that's so you can hear the engine and hear these lovely little trumpets there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so it also gives you a bit more room. So from space point of view, it's only sort of half an inch or so. But
stating the obvious, the trumpets are carbon by the look of it.
Yes, yeah. So again, there's various options on that. So this car has got an open air box, just because the customer wants as much noise as possible. We have an enclosed air box, none of which interferes with the boot, so we try and keep that as much as possible. Having said that, if someone wants something more track focused and wants to lose the boot, then we can do that. But yeah, there's various ways around it, but they're all independent throttle bodies, and depending on which engine spec, we match those to different throttle bodies as well. So we've got two different sizes on that.
And looking at your price list earlier, you seem to introduce quite a lot of configurability to these engine options. People really can pick and choose.
Yeah, there's always, so we have done something called, which we called ASO, but it's obviously blatantly pinched from McLaren, but MSO, but that's an option where you can have whatever you want. So all the stuff we do, I've got a price list, we've got a sort of an options list, if you like. That gives you a serving suggestion, and there's a base car, and we list what that includes, and then anything above and beyond that, then the customers can choose what they want, really, to a certain extent.
And so far with the people that you've been dealing with, where have you found they're going? Are they going for the base spec engine, or are they going for a lot of the options?
No, options, 9 times out of 10. It depends on their needs. So I've got several that are just standard 200 horsepower. I mean, at one point we were talking about having a lower, and I think I did list it, it might even still be on our website, 160 horsepower, but we never got any interest in that. So everyone wanted a 200 horsepower engine, which is fine, that's a great engine, very drivable. And then some people wanted to turn that up, so then there's an option on that. Other people want a bit more carbon externally, some wanted carbon internally. We've changed some of our damper, so we've got a slightly track-focused damper if people do want to go that way. So it's at the end of the day, because it's a bespoke, commissioned car, it's not for me to say what is done with it. It's the customer.
No, absolutely. And we're about to come on to the suspensions, but just before we do that, and I can understand if you're a little bit irritated by this, but every one of these videos that we've had so far in the comments, people have said, why bother going to all of this trouble when you could just put a Honda engine in it? So I feel that we should cover it again.
That's fine. So that's a very viable option. The main reason, and this is the sort of underlying reason why the SuperSport has been, for want of a better word, a success, is that to export these cars now under the 25-year rule, which is US, quite a few other countries. Some have a 30-year rule. I think some European countries have exemptions in one way or another. It needs to be the original chassis, so that's why we need a donor car, and a matching engine. Now, it doesn't need to be matching numbers. If a customer particularly wanted one with the original, and we could supply one, because obviously it comes with an engine, but it has to be an Elise.
It's the type approved engine for that car.
So, and that means that we can get the emissions through under what it would have been in the 90s, and that's allowed it into other countries. You know, the S1 they never had in the States, for example. So of the 10 we've got in build and 3 or 4 we've got here, most of them are going to the US. This is a UK car, so probably why you're following it. And that's the main reason. So there are definitely other options engine-wise, but the amount of work we've put into making sure that is as good as it could ever be is sort of above and beyond, so much so that we're now having certain engine parts and bits manufactured for us because they're either not available or they weren't available to sort of spec that sort of fitted in with what we wanted to do.
Okay, so there you go, doubters, those are the reasons. So, suspension. Tell us where this car's gone, generally where the options are, etc.
So again, as sort of base car, if you like, it will come with the standard width suspension. It'll all be all new, so new wishbones, ball joints, all the fixing. So the corners, you may get, if you get a very nice donor car, sometimes those parts are recyclable, but they are still going to be 25, 30 years old. So we put those to a side and use them maybe for a restoration project or for a project where a car's wishbones are falling to bits. So if they're good ones, we'll keep them. They all get blasted and inspected. But on the SuperSport, they're all new. And then the options are on wide track, which is our slightly wider. And again, it's not massively, but it squares off the geometry of an Elise to a certain extent. So it's wider front and rear. This car's got that. And then our dampers, nitron dampers, which are various different specifications depending if you're going to use the car on road or whether you want it slightly more track focused. So there's a couple of options on those. Spring rates are always a little bit softer because the car's lighter and we're trying to make it compliant. So handling wise, it's not a big crashy sort of track focused car. It's made for, I think as I sort of mentioned before, the roads around here. So B road, we do a lot of trips to Wales to test out sort of the compliance of it. Bombing over cattle grids and stuff like that and making sure it doesn't grind out or pitch you off the road. But again, going back to the specification, it is how the customer's going to... So we have a conversation with the customer, essentially. Yeah,
I mean, with Elises and Lotus customers in particular, suspension is a very important topic for them. Do some of your customers come in with very fixed ideas about what they want or what they think is acceptable?
To a certain extent. They usually come in with the idea that the Elise is one of the best handling cars, either steering feel or just, you know, of its class and age. So we have got a bit of what I call a palate cleanser, which is a very low mileage or relatively low mileage, about 20,000 miles, bog standard S1 that will take someone out in just to, if they're coming back to an Elise, maybe they had one 10, 15 years ago, just to remind them that it is that good, but then it also shows their, you know, that they're a bit rattly. You know, it's got nice light steering, which is mimicked on the narrow track car. That'll have very similar steering. But if you want it a little bit sharpened, then that's why we've got the SuperSport demo, so you can go out and see sort of do an A/B test. And if you lean towards the sort of more standard car, we can build you onto that. And if you lean to something, you know, even the SuperSport's not made as a track car. It has been featured in some sort of track magazine sort of editorials. But we always say it's, you know, it's a fast road car. If you wanted to lean it more doing some track work.
Well, that's the joy, isn't it? This is a bespoke product. You can make it exactly the way somebody wants it. Even if maybe sometimes they're taking it in a direction that you don't necessarily agree with. It's their car at the end of the day. If
they want an all-out, bewinged thing, we can build whatever, but it maybe won't be a SuperSport. So as many SuperSport orders we do, we have probably at the moment, I think I've got at least 5 restorations in between Elises, Exiges, 340Rs, that sort of S1 chassis based cars, but they'll be either back to factory or to be a sort of, you know, a bit more of a track day car.
So you said this car's going to have nitrons on it, and I guess the next time we see this car, it'll have complete suspension.
The next stage, I said, in the next week or so, this is other than some fluids and some plumbing and electrics. It's not far off being fired up. We leave the rear clam off right until the end, just for access. Then it'll be shipped down to our hub dyno, gets dynoed, then we'll know some real numbers.
Yep.
We always keep the
We'll all
customer,
be very interested to know
yeah,
that
we'll
one.
keep the customer informed with that, so we'll do a start-up video for them, we'll let them know, and we'll do a little video of it on the dyno.
Yeah.
It looks quite aggressive, but usually people there's a smile on people's face. Then in this instance, going forward from that, once it's back, we'll put the rear clam on it, so it's basically finished. This one's getting PPF'd, so that'll get fully PPF'd. So that's another trailer job. So there's a lot of to-in and fro-ing, so that's why the time scale. So it's even at this end of the project, or towards the end, it does take a long time just to get, it's to and fro-ing. You've got to go to the dyno, got to get PPF'd. Then we'll come back and do sort of final fit of the interior and stuff like that before we do road test, and then it hands over to the customer.
So I can see that since the last time I looked at this car, some trim has already been fitted, but let's talk about where we are where that's concerned.
Yeah.
The car's been spec'd in a beautiful crayon grey, I believe, and going for some brown options, I believe.
Yeah, so we have like a base black Alcantara interior, that's sort of a neutral palette. And then this is having the Tillit carbon seats. It's having some carbon, not full carbon, but it's having some door cards. And then some extra pieces of Alcantara, and I believe the seats, door sort of side sill covers are going to be in a sort of dark brown, which will look quite cool. And I think it matches the sort of Cerakote. But again, some of those decision choices have sort of come sort of over time, rather than someone sitting down and speccing it and having to make their mind up straight away. We do colour samples. So for instance, this customer wanted a grey palette, so we sent them at least 3 of those on little speed shapes, which again you might have a B-roll of some clips of the ones that are either been chosen or of one of the 3 that you, or 3 or 4, however many you want to choose, to sort of figure out which one you want, and then we can compare that to the interior. But again, the interior I usually leave, just for a practical point of view, clams off till right at the end, so we can carry on doing mechanical works on it. Best will in the world interiors we leave out. We've got a donor seat that we put in when it goes in the dyno, just so nothing gets scuffed when you get in and out. And so when the customer gets it, we'll do a final shakedown on the road. We do at least sort of 500 to 100 miles, just to make sure it's all those sort of things, because little bits and bobs might squeak, rattle, whatever, and then do final bolt checks. So it's ready to go and hand over, and away the customer goes.
Well, the one thing we haven't talked about, and that does also come in with the trim choices, is wheels.
Yes.
So where are we going with wheels on this one?
On this one, we've sourced a set of the Victory wheels, which aren't the lightest in the world. We have got some other wheel options coming, but they're not quite there yet. This one's going to be quite cool because I think it's matched to the Cerakote colour, admittedly in a powder coat, but on the wheels, so they'll be cool in that sort of bronze colour. So it'll be a crown grey with bronze wheels.
Fantastic.
We have a new brake option coming, which may or may not be ready in time for this, but if it doesn't, it'll go to the customer with steel, depending on their timescales. At this time of year, when we're into sort of late spring or early summer, the idea is that was a 12-month build. It was due to be finished about now, so we're sort of there or thereabouts. So we're keen to get it to the customer. If there's some options like our wheels, we've already had discussion when there's another set of wheels and brakes coming. They may be retrofitted at a later date, but we're keen to get the chunk of the summer so the customer can have it and enjoy it.
Do I remember that there was some intention at some point to go carbon ceramic brakes on this car?
Yeah, so we have a set of carbon ceramics, but I haven't signed those off on our... So the process for any new products like that is that I'll sign them off test them on the demo car, on the black SuperSport, which is now sort of semi-retired from being in magazines. Now it's just sort of R&D work, and if we have a new product like that, rather than chucking them on and letting the customer develop it, we'll put them on our car, just sign off that they work as I intend and as it says on the tin. On the carbon brakes, because they're quite a small disc, we haven't gone massive with that because of the size of the wheel. I just want to make sure they work well from colder. Doesn't have to be absolutely freezing cold. And then we've got a batch of those that will go on to customers. Super keen on weight saving on this, so we try and shave a good chunk of weight off those as well.
Okay, so do you have a target? Don't want to push you too much on this, but what target weight would you be aiming for?
Well, it depends on the specifications, obviously,
Yep.
how much carbon somebody use. The sort of official weight we quote, which has been weighed, we went to Evo Track Car of the Year
Yep.
Last year. Ours was closest to the publicised figure. So that was 724 or 5 with a full tank of fuel. I quote 699 with a splash of fuel. So it's a wet weight, but has a little bit of fuel in it, so you can drive to a petrol station. This one, if we go with the carbon ceramics, it's got some other weight savings that the SuperSport didn't have back then, so we've evolved that. It's got a slightly lighter flywheel and a few other parts. So this should be under that. But with the engine turned up a little bit and the weight turned down a little bit, again, we're just nibbling at those tiny little percentages now. So.
Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's going to be very interested to know what the final engine output numbers are and what the final weight of the car is.
So hopefully this will be a little bit lighter and a little bit more powerful.
Yeah.
So just tweaking those. But again, it depends on the spec. So it's definitely going to be lighter. And the other thing is it's going to dynamically, I think with some of those, particularly those carbon brakes on some of the weight savings, dynamically it feels a lot different than some of the numbers feel.
Well, I guess it's true to say that this is the last time we'll be filming one of these videos with the car effectively in bits.
Yes, yeah.
The next time we see it, it'll be a completed car.
Yeah, should all be in well.
Well, fantastic. Thanks again for your time today, Steffen, and I absolutely can't wait to do the next one.
Look forward to it.